Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today we are going to once again talk about Metroid.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I love Metroid. So it's been a couple of weeks since we talked about Metroid. We had the mailbag episode. We talked about some other stuff. But I want to keep going through like the series kind of in release order, because I think it's fun to see the tropes of this entire genre sort of take form as we move through them. So we talked about the first Metroid game first. We talked about Zero Mission and how it kicked off an entire genre that we lovingly refer to as Metroidvania these days, because Metroid and Castlevania are the real roots of those kind of games. The first Metroid was an NES game, so you'd think that like a sequel would come out on the same system, or maybe Nintendo would wait until a Super Nintendo for Metroid 2. Well, let's jump into the Grime facts for Metroid 2, Return of Samus, because you might be surprised. The game was developed by Nintendo R&D 1, and it was released in November of 1991 in North America, January of 1992 in Japan, and May of 1992 in Europe. And it was released on the Game Boy.
What?
Not the NES, not the Super Nintendo, which was out by the time the Game Boy came out. It was released on the Game Boy. And also there's a 3DS like full total remake that came out in September. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I think it's a little too new for us to really dive into. It sold 1.72 million copies by 2003. The genre is like action platformer, or, you know, Metroidvania as they call it these days. The average time to complete is about 5 hours for the original Game Boy game, but 11 hours if you play the 3DS remake. So there's a lot of new content in the 3DS version, which is the version I recommend you play if you're just trying to play the story. You want to play a good Metroid game and you want to see where we're at in the story. The 3DS remake is really, really good for that. The Metacritic score for the 3DS remake is an 85, so that's pretty good. The original is too old for Metacritic, so I think it got decent reviews. Around that time. It's kind of hard to find reviews from games like way back then. You have to like dig up actual print magazines. So it did okay though, I think.
Wait, should we just go spend like hundreds and hundreds of dollars on old issues of Nintendo Power?
Yeah, we should. Actually, I should have looked it up, because all the issues of Nintendo Power, as far as I know, are online. You can find them.
Like PDFs?
I think they're on like archive.org or something. Yeah. So you can go back and read those old issues if you want to, which is very fun. I love reading old issues of Nintendo Power. I love reading old issues of like Computer Gaming World, Electronic Gaming Monthly. All that stuff is really, really fun. And most stuff can be found pretty easily online. Archive.org has a lot of stuff.
Ooh, I will look into that.
Yeah. So yeah, it came out on the Game Boy, and that was after the Super Nintendo had launched. So like the NES original, it was produced by Gunpei Yokoi, the father of the Game Boy, R.I.P., died in a car accident in 1997. At the time of its development, the Game Boy was still pretty new, having been released only a couple of years earlier in 1989. So Nintendo was still trying to get an entry from each of its big franchises out on the Game Boy. Super Mario Land had come out with the Game Boy, and a whole bunch of the launch titles were conversions of like classic NES games like Tetris and Golf and stuff like that. But there weren't any new entries in most of their like classic mascot series until a few years later. Like Metroid 2 was kind of the first one after Super Mario Land, I think, in what I was able to look up, because Link's Awakening didn't come out till like 1993. So they were missing that one for a while. And I think Super Mario Land 2 came out in 1992 as well. So Metroid 2 had some unique challenges to overcome. First was the legacy of the first game. Metroid came out 5 years earlier in 1986, and it was a really, really popular NES game. So any sequel automatically had to live up to that. Especially because Nintendo was already known for putting out really fantastic sequels to their games, except for Zelda 2. People didn't really like that one as much as the first one. But Mario 2 was great. Mario 3 had come out in 1990, and that was pretty great. So Nintendo, even though Zelda 2 was a little bit of a misstep, they had a pretty solid reputation for sequels at this point in time.
We actually have some people on our Discord that will defend Zelda 2. And I like that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so there's people that like it. It's not all bad. And it's actually not a bad game at all.
No, it's not a bad game. It's very difficult, and it's not what you'd expect from a Zelda game. So I can understand people being disappointed when it came out, but if you go back and play it for what it's worth, I think what it is pretty good.
Yeah.
So history has been kind to that game, I think. And so Metroid 2 was not like a port or an adaptation of a game that was already done. They had to create something new from scratch because they were making a sequel. They weren't just putting Metroid on the Game Boy. Now, putting a game on the Game Boy has its own set of problems, right? You've got a smaller screen, a lower resolution than even the NES had. You're working with just 4 shades of gray instead of like a color palette. I think what Nintendo NES was, I don't remember how many colors it had, but certainly more than the Game Boy, 4 shades of gray. Well, 4 shades of green on that original Game Boy, am I right?
Nice.
Did you have an original Game Boy?
I never did, but I had friends that did, and I played it. Gosh, I think we talked about the battery life on that thing is insane.
Yeah, battery life was insane. The screen, even at the time, I think was garbage. Just hot garbage.
It was so hard to see.
It was truly awful. Yeah, because there was so much ghosting going on, and it was all like pea soup green. It was just really terrible.
Didn't you have to buy like one of those they sold them as accessories, those Game Boy lights that would because you couldn't play it in the dark. It was not a backlit screen. You had to have light facing it.
Right. So you get one of those the worm lights that Nyko made. Right. You plug it into the link cable port, and it would put light over the top of your Game Boy so you could front light it. Those weren't great either, but if you're in pitch dark, it might be all you have. It's either that or playing by the street lights as you drive by, right?
Or the street lights.
Did anybody else have a dad that wouldn't let them turn the lights on in the car at night?
Yep.
What is the deal with that?
I don't understand. And what's funny is I turn the light on in my car and I still feel nervous about it. And I'm like, why?
Me too.
Why do I feel nervous about this?
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, I guess maybe the reflection in the windshield. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to ask it.
You know what you could do as a pro tip, though, for that? I remember, because I don't know if I could convince my mom to buy me like a Game Boy light. This was for my Game Boy Color, but I did get a reading light at a Scholastic book fair.
Oh, that's good.
And that works very similar.
Yeah.
Throwing that out there.
You can clip it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, you can buy screen replacements for any Game Boy, and they look better, and they're all backlit. I kind of want to do that one of these days, like pick up a Game Boy Color and a screen replacement, or a Game Boy Advance and a screen replacement for it, because they get some pretty cool looking stuff.
Oh, yeah. That would be awesome.
Really, really good looking stuff.
I did not know you could do... Is it like on iFixit or something like that?
Yeah, they probably sell teardown guides. I don't know if they sell the screens themselves. One of the YouTube channels that I look at a lot for this kind of stuff is the channel called This Does Not Compute. Colin on that channel does a lot of screen replacements on stuff, and I really enjoy watching them. And one day I'm gonna do one.
Let's do it as a podcast. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, making games on a Game Boy was tough because you only had a few colors and the screen sucked. Even back in the day, it wasn't good. Even back in the day, there were better screens that existed than the Game Boy screen. But that's how Nintendo rolled. They made cheaper stuff so that kids could play, I guess. So there's too much stuff to show at once. And actually that worked even further against them because they had to make Samus bigger than she is on the NES because you wouldn't be able to see her on the Game Boy screen. So she ends up taking up more pixels than she does on the NES, taking up all of the screen. So they can't show as much around her. I think it's funny how big she is compared to the rest of the stuff in that game.
Yeah, I got to watch a video on this and see. Yeah,
it's pretty funny. And then because they had to deal with a limited color palette, you had stuff like the Varia suit, which on the NES game was there was a color change when you picked it up. I think you went from yellow to a more orange color when you picked up the Varia suit on the NES. Obviously, they can't do that on the Game Boy, so they had to give Samus these giant shoulders that the player, when the player unlocked the Varia suit, she got these big old shoulder pads. Which turned out great because the Varia suit with those giant pauldrons on her shoulders is pretty iconic and I think essential to her character design these days. She still doesn't feel complete unless she's got those huge shoulder pads, It was the early 90s, which I think shoulder pads were still in at the time in the early 90s. When did shoulder pads go out of style
If you ask me, world? Never, okay?
Yeah.
I'm wearing shoulder pads right now.
Yep. Playing football everywhere.
Oh, I'm just wearing 80s pantsuit shoulder pads under my t-shirt.
Oh, man. It's funny. I've been watching Cheers, and it's funny to see the styles that it goes through. Because it goes through from early 80s. We're about in the early 90s now, and you can see all the styles as we move through the 80s.
It's very fun to watch old TV shows like that and watch it change over time. Oh, and WandaVision, too, is a great example of that. It's so good.
Man. So good. I could talk forever about WandaVision.
Yeah. Okay, we got to keep going. I'm sorry. This is a tangent episode.
That's right. So welcome to Codex, a history of tangents. So Metroid II had a lot of limitations to deal with, but there was one good thing. Battery-backed cartridges had dropped in price enough that by the end of 1991, Nintendo could afford to put some save functions into more games that need them. So the NES game of Metroid had a password system, as you'll recall. Not so on the Game Boy. It was technically superior in that sense, in that it had save files like the Famicom Disk version of the original Metroid, which is how that game came out in Japan originally.
Wasn't this a problem, though? I want to say it was with the Game Boy Advance, the save batteries happened to be faulty or would go out sooner than older cartridges would.
Yeah, there is an issue with older cartridges with their batteries dying. The one that comes to mind that was especially egregious was the Pokemon Gold and Silver games, because they had clocks built into them, and I want to say they were the first Game Boy games that have clocks built into them. Maybe that's not right, but because they had clocks built into them, their battery drained like 10 times faster than a normal Game Boy battery would drain. So like a normal Game Boy battery should last like 10, maybe 15 years, but or maybe even longer to keep those save files. But in Pokemon Gold and Silver, they only lasted like 5 or 6 years, which is a long time, but also there's no, I mean, you can replace them. You can open a cartridge up and replace it. I've done that, but it's not a thing that you do. You know what I mean? You avoid the warranty. You're not going to get any help from Nintendo doing it. And so it was like those games sort of became unusable after like 5 or 6 years because they couldn't hold their save files anymore. So you would start a game up, save it, turn the Game Boy off, load it back up, no more save file. And that's a problem with a game like Pokemon.
Yeah, you can't do that in one sitting.
Yeah, so I think some of the later Game Boy Advance games stopped. They got away from using batteries in them and they just used flash memory, which doesn't require power to keep it rolling, so you didn't need batteries in it. But yeah, so at this point in time, battery-backed saves were becoming much more of a thing. And so Nintendo put it in the Game Boy game. So that's a little bit about like sort of the technical limitations and the technology we were dealing with. Let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. Because despite the limitations of being on a weaker, more portable platform, I think the team was actually able to make huge gameplay strides. So Metroid 2 plays out mostly like the first Metroid. It's a side-scrolling shooter, focused a bit more on exploration and collecting upgrades for Samus and her lasers, her guns, and her suit. Metroid 2 is a little bit more linear than the previous title, though, because everything is focused on killing Metroids. There are 47 of them in this game, to be exact, and to move on, like to move through the world, to open up more parts of the game world, you have to kill a certain number of Metroids to go deeper and deeper into the planet, which is planet SR388, the home world of the Metroids. So a quick reminder on what Metroids are. Metroids are the main bad guys in the Metroid series. Well, bad guys is tough because I feel like Metroids are just out there living their lives and space pirates are always trying to use them for bad things. They're particularly scary because they can hurt you pretty bad. But I feel like the Metroids are like just a true neutral in terms of bad guys, which means sometimes they're against you, sometimes they're not. But they are not the name of the protagonist. So if you ever see somebody trying to call Samus Metroid, they're wrong. It's like calling Link Zelda, and I won't have it.
Not okay.
Not okay. Anyway, Metroids are usually portrayed as being incredibly dangerous to people, so they're very scary. So we got to go here. We got to wipe out some Metroids because of reasons, which we'll get into when we talk about the story a little bit. Which is now, as a matter of fact. So I'll get into a few of the things that the game added to the Metroid franchise a little bit later. I want to talk about the story. So in classic 80s, 90s video game style, the story is a little bit light on the game itself, but behind the scenes, it's a little bit deeper. Metroid is often praised for how the story takes a back seat, and the core of the game is just Samus exploring a world by herself, sort of uncovering the mysteries, and you can choose to pay attention or not. I think the Prime series is a really good example of that. You can choose to pay attention to and scan everything and get all the backstory that way, or you can just kind of run around and shoot stuff, and eventually you'll figure it out too, or you'll figure out what you need to do. But there is a lot of backstory, especially for Metroid 2. So as you'll recall, the space pirates were the actual bad dudes in the first Metroid game. They had acquired some Metroids and were gearing up to start using them as weapons to like take over the galaxy or something bad like that. They were going to start using Metroids as bioweapons. So anyway, Samus was successful, defeated the space pirates, evil was punished, but the Galactic Federation is still pretty worried about these Metroid things. They're pretty scary, and if they were to be weaponized by space pirates again or another group of bad guys, they could really cause some damage. So they decide they're going to send some teams in to the Metroid's home planet of SR388 to try to take them all out. But the teams they send in don't come back because Metroids are scary and they hurt people if you try to hurt them. So the Federation fears the worst.
What if you tried to be their friend?
Well, we'll get to that.
Mike. I thought my question was a joke, but this is intriguing.
Yeah. So now the Federation has chosen to send in bounty hunter extraordinaire Samus Aran to clean up the mess once and for all. Oh, by the way, do you know why Samus is named Samus, Mike? I feel like you had the knowledge of this at one point.
Okay, that's a perfect setup, but I blew it by telling everyone it was a setup. So I was wondering why Samus is named Samus Aran. So here is the thing I found on the Samus Aran. It's called Wikitroid, is the wiki. So the name Samus is the female variant of the name Seamus, which is Celtic for James, which means he who supplants. Her last name, Aran, it could refer to the Aran Islands on the west coast of Ireland. So if you combine those two names together, it is she who supplants an island or she who conquers an isolated area by force. Both of which are good translations, and I think both of which, Tyler, apply to the games, correct?
Yeah, she conquers an isolated area. That's the whole thing about Metroid, is that they're like, you're very isolated and like you're there all by yourself, which is why Metroid Prime 3 is weird, because you're not that. But
hey, but you know what? That's what those Nintendo developers really were thinking ahead. I love it.
They really were. Yeah, that's pretty good. So anyway, they've chosen to send in the bounty hunter Samus Aran to clean up the mess once and for all. I don't know why they didn't send her in to begin with, since she's clearly the best person for the job. But hey, you live, you learn, you send in Samus, right? Mm-hmm. And you lose a bunch of innocent people along the way, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Many Bothans died for that information.
Yeah. So I should note, this is the second Metroid game to be released, but it is not the second Metroid game in terms of story order. So between Metroid and Metroid 2, the entire Metroid Prime series has happened. So this is a pretty experienced Samus we're talking about here. Not that the original Metroid was her first mission or anything like that, I'm sure. But she's done a lot of stuff between Metroid 1 and Metroid 2. So she knows what's up. She's seen some stuff when it comes to Metroids and Prime Metroids, which is the big bad in Metroid Prime. Is very scary. So as Samus moves through SR 388, killing Metroids left and right, she descends deeper and deeper into the planet, seeing more Metroids in their various stages of their lives. And they get scarier too, because games need to get harder as you move through them. Also, it's scary to go deeper and deeper into a planet, and then the monsters get scarier too.
Everyone knows that. Everyone, right? That's just, you gotta be knowledgeable in that. If you go deeper,
that's right,
it's gonna get scarier.
That's right. So there's a lot of different kinds of Metroids, actually. There's like the floaty, cute kind, and it gets all the way to the scary lizard kind. So they get pretty intense. So I'm going to get you some spoilers here, which is going to answer your question you had earlier, Mike. But there's some spoilers here, even though this game is 30 years old. And honestly, you're not playing Metroid 2 for the story here. But Samus eventually kills the Queen Metroid, eradicating the Scourge once and for all. She makes her way back out of the planet, coming across a Metroid egg along the way. It hatches, and a sweet little baby Metroid imprints on Samus, thinking she's its mother. So Samus, as she's making her way out of the planet, this Metroid is like helping her clear debris and stuff like that. It's like kind of getting her, being her friend, because the Metroid thinks that Samus is the Metroid's mother. And so by the time they get to the end, Samus, being a very compassionate individual, can't just kill the sweet baby Metroid, so she decides to keep it, bringing it along on her next journey. More on that when we talk about Super Metroid, because this is really like planting the seeds for a very special moment in Super Metroid. And for those of you who have played Super Metroid, y'all know what I'm talking about here when it comes to baby Metroids. So the game mostly plays out like its previous installment, but Nintendo went all out on adding new upgrades for Samus to acquire. So a lot of these upgrades would become staples throughout the series later on too, and this would be the first game we see them. So here's a list of upgrades. You got your Morph Ball Bomb. Classic. Dropping bombs while rolled up into Morph Ball form. You got, this is a new one, the Spider Ball, which lets you climb walls as a Morph Ball, which is very cool. This one would also later be seen in the Prime series. So previously seen in the Prime series, if we're talking in-game chronologically, but later in release order. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Spider Ball, super fun. You also get the Spring Ball, which is, you can jump as a ball. It's cool. It opens up some new areas and fun new ball rolling puzzles. Excuse me. You've got the Ice Beam, which carries over from the NES game. The beam upgrade's a little bit different than other upgrades, since you can only have one of them equipped at any one time. And if you want to switch, you have to go back to where the beam was that you wanted, I think, which is kind of crazy. They're all available in the final area to make switching a little bit easier if you feel like switching. But it probably would have been better if they just allowed you to switch from anywhere. Anyway, the Ice Beam freezes enemies. Pretty straightforward. You got a Wave Beam, like in the original Metroid. It fires in like a weird wavy pattern. It goes through walls and penetrates enemy armor, so it's useful against certain types of armored enemies. You've got the Spazer or Spazzer. Anyway, it's like 3 beams that fire in parallel to each other. It's not that exciting, but it's pretty powerful. It does a lot of damage. And then the Plasma Beam is the last one you can find, and it goes through enemies. So you can like kill more than one enemies if they're like standing near each other, which is cool.
It's the fusion rifle of Metroid.
That's right. And you got a few jumpy things that they added too. The high jump boots, that one's also in the NES game. Lets you jump higher, which is pretty cool. Lets you get to new areas you couldn't reach before. There are going to be a lot of areas, like as you go through, you'll be like, oh, if I could jump higher. And once you get the high jump boots, you'll be like, yes, I can finally jump higher. You can go back to those places and get the upgrades or whatever. You've also got the space jump, which I'm pretty sure is new to the series in this game. I don't think that's in the NES one, which basically lets Samus jump like infinitely. So you can reach like really high areas with this. And then there's kind of a fun rhythm game to play with it because you have to like time your jumps right. You get the screw attack, which also returns from the original game. Samus spins while jumping, which deals a bunch of damage. So when you pair that with the space jump, it makes her like super dangerous to be spinny, jumpy person, which
also
is very
a
fun.
super annoying move in Super Smash Brothers.
Yes, very annoying in Super Smash Brothers. The last thing that you can pick up in this game that also returns from the NES game, we talked about it earlier, is the Varia suit, which makes Samus take less damage and move a little bit faster. Also, it looks way cooler. She gets the shoulder pads, which I can't believe ever went out of style. Well, I don't know. Maybe I can.
So wait, can we say that Destiny's Titan gigantic shoulder pads are really just a nod to Metroid?
Could be.
It could be. It could be Metroid was a trendsetter, and that's Destiny's way of being like, hey, we see you, and that's why every single Titan armor has gigantic shoulders.
Yeah, that's what I was also thinking that about like World of Warcraft too, because there's gigantic shoulders in that game as well.
Yeah. What is it with the world and gigantic shoulders? It's Metroid.
I don't know. And the Gears of War series, big old shoulders too.
Oh, yeah. When you were talking about going deeper and deeper into the ground, I thought Gears of War immediately. Because it also gets scarier.
They do that in Gears of War too, don't they?
Yeah.
They keep going further and further, and then they blow up the city and
stuff. It gets scarier and scarier.
It does, yeah. But Gears of War 2 owes a lot to Metroid 2.
Diablo 1, deeper and deeper into the chapel. It gets scarier and scarier. You don't want to go dig deep, people, okay? That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's the lesson.
If you're trying to avoid scaries anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want scaries, that's what you should do.
If you want spooky things, go deeper into the earth. But otherwise, stay up here.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the legacy that Metroid 2 left behind. So critics generally praised it at the time, though, like I said, it's kind of hard to find reviews online for that period of time. But they mostly thought it was a great addition to the franchise on Game Boy. It added a lot of things that the series would use in the future, including battery-backed saves, although I don't know if Metroid was like leading the charge on this, but it definitely was like still kind of a new thing back then. The screw attack, the now iconic design of Samus's Varia suit. So looking back, I think that's what surprises me the most, because you wouldn't think that a game on a system as limited as the Game Boy would be able to update the look of a character so much that it would become iconic and synonymous with that character even 30 years later. And I think it's because those limitations existed on the Game Boy that made them have to update her in the first place, right? If the Game Boy could display everything the NES could display, we probably wouldn't have gotten those sweet shoulders on Samus that she still has today. We would have just gotten color changes for her suit when she got a new suit upgrade. So like that's just kind of crazy to me, because of the lower limitations make me think, wow, you certainly couldn't do anything visually with this because you have limitations, but then those limitations lead right into being able to do something cool, which is blows my mind.
I mean, this game did so much for being so crappy looking.
Yeah. So I think, I think it's just crazy. Like if the first Game Boy were a color Game Boy, then Samus would look totally different today, probably.
And isn't the remake of this that we're going to talk about that came out in 2017 looks gorgeous, right?
Yes. Oh man, it is a great game. I think also Metroid 2 showed how good Nintendo was at translating their classic franchises to new platforms with new capabilities and limitations. Like it wasn't the first game they did this with, because they had successfully transitioned Mario to the Game Boy at this point in time. Like Mario Land was awesome and had everything you wanted out of a Mario game. But it really started to like solidify that they had what it takes to stay alive in this video game industry, I think, which was a little bit precarious still in the late 80s, early 90s. The industry was getting ready to do a big transition to a new generation of consoles from the NES to the Super NES. And while the industry had done console generations before that, like Nintendo to Super Nintendo was not the first time a console had ever upgraded. I think video games had hit a point of mass adoption at that point that it was a big deal for a lot of people who hadn't dealt with that before. And so we weren't sure if people would be able, or if Nintendo would be able to translate those games to a new platform, especially one that's like a portable platform with lower capabilities. And they were able to do it, and they would continue doing that. I mean, I always point to like Metroid Prime as being a great example of a transition from Super Nintendo to GameCube. And when we talked about last week or the week before, we even talked about like Link to the Past going to Ocarina of Time, like changing the game significantly for a new platform while still retaining the core of it is something Nintendo is unparalleled at. Like, I don't think any game developer does that with the same level of success that Nintendo does, and how often they are successful with making those transitions, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It is worth noting that a few years ago, Nintendo made that full remake of Return of Samus called Metroid: Samus Returns, which is a little bit more concise of a title. Like I said, I think it's still a little bit too new for us to cover in depth on our show, but we can talk about it for just a second. It is a full top to bottom remake of the original. It's nearly twice as long. They added in a ton of new content. They add new story bits in it that help connect it to both the Metroid Prime series and the Game Boy Advance title Metroid Fusion, which takes place later in the timeline, but came out in 2002, I want to say. Plus, the graphics are phenomenal on the 3DS. They're awesome. I'm kind of bummed that it was a 3DS title and not a Switch title, because by the time that game had come out, it was like pretty clear that the 3DS was like not it anymore. We were all about the Switch in like November or September. It was like the fall of 2017, I think. So the Switch had been out for like 6 or 7 months, and we were like kind of tired of buying 3DS games, I think. So I'm hoping they can like re-release it on the Switch in the future. I think that would be cool. But if you're looking for the best way to play this game, that's the best way to experience the story, because they add in, they fill in a lot of stuff too with later games. But if you want to experience what a great game the original was in the context that it was released in, I think you still kind of got to play the original either on a Game Boy or on the 3DS Virtual Console. I think you can get it on the 3DS Virtual Console for a couple of bucks probably. So that's worth playing too if you want to be like, okay, transport me back to the early 90s and I want to play a Metroid game. That's the way to do it. I haven't spent a whole ton of time myself with the original, but I truly loved the remake, and I just highly recommend playing that if you get the chance. So...
yeah, I think
anyway.
I've actually played the original on a Game Boy. I think it was one of the situations where my friend had it and I played it. But again, I was a kid, didn't know what was going on, didn't get very far, you know, because it's kind of it's challenging if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough to play someone else's game too, especially when it's one that's so progression based, where it's like, that's hard to borrow games from friends, I think.
It really is.
In that sense. But yeah, so that's kind of it for Metroid 2. I think in a couple of weeks we'll probably come back and talk about Super Metroid, which I know a lot of people love Super Metroid, and so I'm happy to talk about that one. What you been playing, Mike?
Well, I have been playing the new Super Mario World on
Super Mario 3D World.
Super Mario 3D World, yeah. And I get so confused with the titles because it's New Super Mario Brothers, you know, and I mix it up with the other one. But yeah, the 3D World is so fun. I've been playing it co-op with my girlfriend. It's been super fun, and yeah, it's just great. It's just really good. And Kitty Cat Mario. Cutest Mario. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah.
I'm taking a stand right here, right now. I mean, I thought Bumblebee Mario was the cutest Mario. No.
He was.
It's Cat Mario, for sure.
Yep. That's Galaxy 2, right? Bumblebee Mario?
Bumblebee Mario is Galaxy, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Galaxy 1, I think, is where I first encountered Bumblebee Mario. But it's so great, and I have so much fun with it. Been loving that. Playing a lot of Destiny. I'm back in the saddle again with that. Just playing the things that I can play, like, either with you or by myself, you know. And then, yeah, just it really. I've been playing Apex too, but I haven't really picked up any new games. Really, we kind of are done with WoW for now, I think. And yeah, it's been pretty good. So I need to play the Bowser's Fury though. That's the one I really want to play.
Yeah,
because it's weird. It's like the world changes every 20 minutes, and then you got to deal with that.
It seems crazy. I need to play that.
So, and I think that's more like I'm gonna play that by myself. You know?
Yeah.
Because my girlfriend likes Mario a lot, but she just likes it where it's more like level based, you know, like Super Mario 3D World is. And so, yeah, it's good. But what have you been playing?
Let's see. This week I've been playing, I guess this time last week I did not have a PlayStation 5. I do now. I managed to snag one. Like Tuesday night, the tweet goes out at like midnight. Follow PS5 stock alerts on Twitter. And I ring the bell for notifications so that my phone lights up, and they tweet whenever a PlayStation 5 comes in stock somewhere. And it went in stock on Amazon at like midnight on, I think, Tuesday. And so I managed to grab one after clicking add to cart like 100 times. It finally got in my cart. I bought it and I got it. And so I've been playing, so I got the PlayStation 5, but I'm still working on Modern Warfare 3. I want to finish that before I really, really dive into something new, because I want to put a bow on that Modern Warfare series. But I started playing Miles Morales Spider-Man game. So I've probably got about an hour on that game so far, and it's fun. It's more Spider-Man. If you like the Spider-Man game on PS4, it's more of that. So it's great. And Dark Horse sleeper hit here. Astros Playground is a game that comes with the PlayStation 5, and it is so fun. It's like a 3D platformer, so it feels a lot like a Mario game. And it is just full of really cool uses of the new PlayStation 5 controller, like the haptics that it has in it. When you like run around and stuff, it like shakes every time he takes a step, and it feels different depending on what kinds of things he's standing on. So if he's running through sand, it kind of feels like sand. It's hard to explain. If he's like walking on a harder surface, it kind of clinks a little bit. It's really hard to explain, but it's like makes a lot of sense, and it's really fun.
I wanna try this out for sure.
Yeah, and Astros Playground is just a really good demo for just all the cool things that the PlayStation 5 controller can do. And then it's also just full of like PlayStation nostalgia stuff. So there's like robots everywhere, and like some of them will be acting out scenes from classic PlayStation games. There's 4 main worlds. Each one is like sort of themed like different PlayStations. You've got a PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you like collect the artifacts of like PlayStation 4 stuff, including some pretty obscure accessories, which is really fun. And then it has like a really fun kind of final boss that's a good Easter egg for folks who've been around the PlayStation era for a while. I plan to complete it. You can probably beat all of the levels in like 2 hours. And then if you want to go back and get all the puzzle pieces and all the artifacts and stuff, that's probably another 2 hours, I bet. Like I imagine the whole thing probably lasts under 5 hours to get 100% on it. But it's free, and man, it's just fun. Like the music is good. It's just like you can just tell the people that made this game had so much fun making it. You know, when you play a game where you're just like, gosh, I can tell that whoever made this game, they were told like, hey, just like, I don't know, make a game that shows off the controller. We don't care if it's good or not. We're gonna bundle it for free anyway. Just make something that shows it off. And like somebody was like, challenge accepted. I'm gonna put the most heart into this game that anybody has ever put into a tech demo. And so that was my sleeper hit of last week. I loved Astros Playground.
That makes me want to play this now. Oh man, I still am like, because I've been a full Xbox person most of my video gaming life, you know, and I really am leaning towards getting the PS5 this time. I think just because I don't need a new Xbox. Like older games still play on my Xbox. The ones I play, like the free ones, like Apex and things like that, with friends. So I'm like, maybe I get a PS5 when that rolls around, you know, when it's not impossible to get one.
Right. I think everything that's going to be worth playing on the Series X is also going to be on PC too. So if you have
exactly, that's the other thing. Yeah, that's the other big
it's like,
one.
yeah, like you don't need to buy an Xbox to play the new Halo game. That's going to come out on PC. And like everything first party from Microsoft is going to hit Game Pass and be on PC. So it's like, why, like, what do you even get if you buy a Series X? There's nothing I can't play on my PC.
Just a brick that plays Netflix, you know?
Yeah. If you already have an Xbox One.
I already got a brick that plays Netflix. Yeah. That's
right. So not that there's anything on PlayStation 5 that you can't play elsewhere too, except for the remake of Demon's Souls. Everything else has PS4 versions. Well, Astro's Playground is a PS5 exclusive, I suppose.
You know what? And that sounds like it's selling it for me. That 2 hours sounds like it's worth.
Yeah.
Is it $500? How much does it cost to get a new PS5? Is it $600?
Yes.
$500?
Yeah, they're $500. Yeah.
$500. I feel like it's the normal.
That's for the one with the disc drive. If you don't want a disc drive, you can shave $100 off.
Ooh, that might be it for me. I don't want a disc drive. You know, like
yeah, it depends because there's a lot of good deals you can get on PS4 games, and it plays PS4 games.
Oh, never mind then. And also, I forget, collect physical copies of your games, right?
Not so much anymore. I don't know. I haven't bought any physical PS5 games. Of course, I've only bought Spider-Man, but
this is me whispering to the listener right now. Tyler has a whole bookshelf covered in video games.
That's true. I do have a lot of physical games, but I think from now on, I'm kind of like every time I move and I have to move like these shelves of video games, I'm like, gosh, I should have just bought everything digital.
You got to keep that collection though. You know, you got to keep it going.
Yeah.
I didn't because I moved to LA without my comic book collection and all my trade paperbacks, which take up a whole bookshelf. And I got them back when I moved back up here. And I feel so good now that they're with me again. I missed them so much. Do I read them?
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely not. They sit there.
Do I buy them again on Comixology? Yes, I do.
Yeah. But all right, cool. Well, we have some emails for you. Do you want to read some emails?
Sure. You want to take that first email?
Yeah, I'll take. This is from Burger Champ, our friend Burger Champ. Hello, game historians. Burger Champ remembered to email several weeks in a row. Here's what he has to say this week. With the current balance of a successful AAA and indie games on the market, do you tend to gravitate toward a more story-based experience or an in-depth story? I know this can be situational. Would you have more tolerance for a game with a bad story but tight controls and fun gameplay, or a game with sloppy but not broken mechanics and a really engrossing story? So do you want to have a game with a really good story but ho-hum gameplay, or a game with ho-hum story but really good gameplay? Well, I can tell you, because I am a Destiny 2 player, that I enjoy very good gameplay and a ho-hum story. And I like Destiny's story, and I like the world it's built in, but they haven't been able to produce the story content that we all know, which for good reason. I'm not placing any blame here, but I always go back to that game because shooting aliens feels so good.
Yep.
And I think gameplay, in my opinion and my preference, is more important than a good story. What do you think, Tyler?
For me, I think, I don't know if I have a preference for one over the other. I think that certainly a good story can make up for meh gameplay, although I would argue at a certain point, it's like, well, maybe you should have just made a movie then.
Yeah.
But I've definitely played games where I was like super into the story, and I wouldn't have stuck it out to the end if the story weren't so good. But then there's also, I mean, there's a million games that have almost no story and they're just fun to play, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you can go either way. I don't know. It's hard to say. Would I rather, like, in a desert island scenario, if I could only pick games that had stories versus games that had good gameplay? That's a good question. I probably would pick the stories at that point, because that would be my only connection to humanity on my deserted island. So I would probably prefer the stories over the gameplay. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. I think, because now that I think about it, I have played games that have had a really good story and ho-hum gameplay because I want to see what happens. So I guess my preference is leaning towards gameplay, though, because like you said, at what point should it just be a movie? That's really, I think, the big crux of the argument.
Yeah, or write a book, or, like there's, yeah.
I'm thinking about also Call of the Sea, too, where Call of the Sea, I just played that. That's the puzzle game on Xbox Game Pass, is...
Oh, yeah.
Fun puzzles, but I was in it for the story, and there were also little things in the gameplay mechanics, like, for example, how fast the character moves, that really drive me crazy. Because, like, if you have to run back and forth between puzzles, or look at something and then run back and look at something and run back, it gets so tedious. Like, just make this person run like a superhuman for the sake of me getting along with my day. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I feel. Okay, so Burger Champ goes on to say, keep up the good work, and I can't wait for your next episode on the Nokia N-Gage. And I don't mean an episode about the Nokia N-Gage. I mean the episode you record on the Nokia N-Gage. The episode will be about the tigergame.com. Your insert word here, Burger Champ. Thank you, Burger Champ. That was a great email. Yeah, now I'm gonna think about that for a while. I'm still sticking in the gameplay camp. I got to make a choice. I'm gonna stick in the gameplay camp.
Yeah. Well, on this deserted island, do I also get to bring stories with me? Like, do I also get to bring books or movies? And if that's the case, then I would definitely pick. I would rather have good gameplay over a good story, because I can get my stories elsewhere, right?
Yeah, that's right. I gotta go watch my stories. Like
yeah.
Soap opera stuff. You want to read the next email from Anthony?
That's what I say every week when I watch This Is Us. I'm like, I gotta go watch my stories. I'll read Anthony's email here. He says, "Hi, Mike and Tyler. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. My roommate showed me your show over the summer, and I'm currently on my third listen through of it." Wow. That's a lot of us.
Thank you for listening to us. And that's awesome.
And for listening to this 3 times now.
They probably know more about video games than we do at this point.
That's true. Yeah. They probably retained more about this stuff than we have. Sometimes we do an episode, and like a year later, I'm like, did we do that already?
Yeah. Like 2 hours from now, you're going to call me and ask me why Samus Aran is named Samus Aran, and I'm going to have no idea. So
yeah. Anthony goes on to say, I work overnight, so it's always nice having something entertaining to listen to. A couple of ideas for future episodes I have is the Devil May Cry series, Contra, and Ninja Gaiden. Always Keep up the good work.
Those are
Anthony. Thanks, Anthony. Those are good calls. I don't have a lot of experience with those series, but that doesn't mean we can't do it.
I've beaten Contra with cheats, like everyone who's beaten Contra.
Up, down, down, left, right, left, right.
Yeah,
BA.
you just get all the lives and you just go, because otherwise it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But I know both of those, Devil May Cry and Ninja Gaiden, are really good, and I need to play them.
Yeah, I do as well. I know they kind of have reputations for being very difficult, which is in the past has been something I struggle with because I play a lot of video games, but I'm not good at them. So
that's not true.
I struggle with games that are.
Listener again. Tyler's really good at video games. Just so you know,
not true.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple games that we've played where I'm like, look at this guy right here. Okay, League of Legends, for example. Yeah.
That's just brute force. I just played so much of it that at a certain point, you gain knowledge. I have a lot of knowledge. I don't know if I'm good at it.
You mean like naturally talented is what you mean?
Well, no, because I think I would be a pro if that were the case.
If you were, but so you're saying you're not naturally talented though?
I'm not. Yes.
Okay.
Not naturally talented.
All right. Because if you were naturally talented, you wouldn't even need this video game podcast anymore. You'd be professional.
That's right.
All right. Thank you for the email, though, Anthony. Yeah. We actually have a review I wanted to read real quick. We got a new review, and of course, my Face ID is not working. So this is from Snuggins12388. Exactly what I was looking for. 5 stars. Really fantastic podcast. Exactly what I was looking for when searching for a video game history podcast. Great balance of humor and education. I'm working on the backlog and also look forward to new episodes each week. Side note, the Discord is super chill and enjoyable as well. Thank you so much, Snuggins, for segueing us directly into having a Discord. Worked out perfectly. So if you want to join the Discord, you can follow us, or don't have to follow us. You can go to our Twitters. I'm at Micoletta, and Tyler is at SneakerElf, ELPH. I have it pinned to my profile. You can just click on the link.
I should probably do that.
Yeah.
Can I pin someone else's tweet? Can I pin your tweet to my profile?
You can retweet my tweet and then pin it, I think. I think you can.
Okay.
But that link never expires. And you can also just email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com, and I will send you a link as well. And you can just email us with any questions you have. People seem to enjoy the mailbag episode on the Discord, so we might do more of those when we get a large collection of email. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
I'm down.
I think that's about it. I have a topic that I think I want to talk to you about next week, because it's still hot in the news right now, but it relates to something we were talking about a couple weeks ago on an episode, and I think on last week's episode actually. And I want to save it for when we have all the time in the world to talk about it, to give you a little teaser. But next week I will be continuing on with Castlevania, and then at the end of the episode we're going to talk a little bit about this something that came up in the news. So I'm excited.
News on our history podcast?
Yeah.
Don't we need to wait till it's like a decade old at least?
Well, we're waiting an extra week, so then it's history. That's the point. Yeah, you see what I did there?
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The loophole. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Tyler, do you want to say bye to everybody?
Yeah, goodbye, everybody.